Picture this. You are lying in bed. The room is pitch black. There is just that familiar blue glow lighting up your face. You swipe up. It is a heartbreaking video from a war zone, real human tragedy. You feel a quick pang of sadness, but then almost on autopilot, your thumb twitches. You swipe again. Now it is a guy in a giant hot dog suit falling off a skateboard. You chuckle. You swipe again. Someone's funeral. Next swipe. A recipe for baked pasta. Grief, comedy, death, and dinner, all flattened into a single 10-second loop. It is the completely chaotic way to experience the world. But what really fascinated me wasn't the videos themselves. It was the absolute ease of the transition. The fact that we don't even blink anymore. We just keep moving our thumbs. We call it staying entertained. We call it being connected. But when you really step back and watch that blind automatic reflex in action, you have to wonder, are we actually consuming content? Or are we just applying a very quiet, very glowing anesthesia?
Wow. Yeah, it is. It's honestly a bit terrifying when you frame it like that.
It really is. And welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. We're going to take that exact concept of the glowing anesthesia and look at what it actually looks like when it just completely takes over your biology.
Right, because this goes way beyond just, a bad habit.
Exactly. So imagine this guy, let's just call him Elias. It is like 3:148 in the morning.
The classic doom scrolling hour.
You know it. His bedroom is cramped, it is totally dark, and there's just this pale, almost deathly blue light from his phone, casting these harsh shadows on his face.
And he probably wanted to go to sleep hours ago.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He had every intention of setting his alarm at 10:30 p.m. He promised himself, just one more refresh and then I am done.
We have all been there.
We really have. But now look at his hand. His thumb is moving with this mechanical, involuntary twitch. He swipes down, he waits a fraction of a second for that little loading circle to spin, and then he releases.
It's pure reflex at that point.
The phone has basically become a glowing slot machine.
Yeah.
And his brain is acting like a desperate, exhausted gambler on a casino floor.
I love that analogy because most of what he sees is just garbage.
It's ash. It is a distant acquaintance's curated vacation photo, a meme he saw 3 weeks ago. Or like an algorithmic ad trying to sell him sleep supplements, ironically.
Of course. It's always sleep supplements.
But then, right when he is about to give up, he gets a hit. It's this perfectly tailored piece of controversy, some micro drama that makes his heart rate spike.
A tiny synthetic drop of dopamine right into his synapses.
And at this point, he actually hates the feeling of the cold, smooth glass under his fingers. He can feel the heavy silence of his apartment pressing against the noise of the screen.
He's probably physically exhausted, too.
His eyes are watering, but he's not sad. It is just this profound, terrifying paralysis. The door to his digital prison is wide open. He could just put the phone down.
But he doesn't.
His thumb twitches again. Swipe, load, release.
It's incredibly unsettling when you break it down into physical movements like that.
Why does he do it?
Well, what is critical to understand about that dark room at 3:140 a.m. is that this is not a personal failure on Elias's part.
Okay.
It is not a lack of willpower. What you just described is the highly predictable, meticulously engineered outcome of a specific structural architecture.
So it's built to do this.
To grasp the paralysis, we have to look past the content, the war zones, the hot dog suits, and look at the delivery system itself.
Right, because the content is almost secondary to the reflex, isn't it?
Completely secondary. The behavior is driven by this concept in behavioral psychology called variable ratio reinforcement.
Variable ratio reinforcement.
So this isn't some new concept born in Silicon Valley. It was actually first identified by B.F. Skinner back in the mid-20th century.
Wait, the rat guy?
The rat guy. Through his work on operant conditioning, he ran these famous experiments with rats and pigeons in isolated boxes to map out how behavior is learned.
The Skinner boxes.
So he discovered something fascinating about rewards. If you put a rat in a box with a lever, and every single time the rat presses it, it gets a food pellet.
Okay, so a one-to-one transaction.
The rat learns the behavior quickly, but the behavior is very moderate. It only presses the lever when it's actually hungry. And if you unplug the machine so no more food comes out, the rat tries a few times, realizes the deal is off, and just stops entirely. It's called extinction.
It's totally predictable. The rat understands the rules.
But here is where Skinner changed psychology forever. He altered the machine so the reward became unpredictable. Sometimes the rat presses the lever and gets a pellet. Sometimes it takes 5 presses. Sometimes it takes 50.
Oh.
There is no discernible pattern. The animal never knows exactly how much effort is required to get that next reward.
So what happens to the rat?
When you introduce this variable schedule, the behavior changes completely. It becomes frantic, it becomes compulsive.
Even if it's not hungry?
Even if it's not hungry, the rat will press the lever obsessively, and the behavior becomes incredibly resistant to extinction. Even if you turn the machine off completely, that rat will keep pressing the lever thousands of times.
Hoping that the next one is the magic number.
Exactly. This biological vulnerability is the foundational psychology of the casino slot machine. And it is the exact same mechanism interface designers have embedded into modern digital platforms. When Elias's thumb twitches to swipe down, his nervous system is doing exactly what the rat was doing.
He is literally pulling a digital lever.
On a variable ratio schedule.
That explains why the boring posts, the recycled memes, is actually a necessary part of the craft.
Exactly. It's not a bug that the feed is mostly garbage. It's a feature.
Because if every single swipe was a massive reward, if every post was hilarious, your nervous system would just get full, right?
Yes, you would reach satiation, like eating too much rich food. You just put the phone down.
But because most of it is irrelevant, your brain enters this constant state of heightened vigilance. You are scanning the ash, waiting for the unpredictable hit.
And that state of vigilance is key. And to really understand why it paralyzes us, we actually have to correct a massive cultural misunderstanding about dopamine.
Everyone gets this wrong.
If you ask the average person what dopamine does, they say it's the pleasure chemical.
Right. The reward molecule. Like I eat cake, I get dopamine.
But neurobiologically, that is fundamentally inaccurate. Dopamine is not about pleasure. It is a seeking chemical.
A seeking chemical.
It is a neuromodulator that drives desire, motivation, and anticipation. It is the biological engine that forces an organism to pursue things it needs to survive.
Okay, so it pushes you forward.
Right. And the most fascinating part is the timing. The largest release of dopamine in your brain does not happen when you consume the reward. The spike happens right before the reward arrives. It is the anticipation that generates the high.
I really want to pause on this. You're saying that in Elias's room, the peak of the neurological event isn't when he is watching the actual video. The peak is that fraction of a second when his thumb releases the screen and that little gray circle is spinning.
That little spinning circle is the absolute apex of the dopamine rush. It represents pure, unresolved possibility. The digital environments we inhabit are meticulously designed to exploit that exact moment of anticipation. They trap you in a state of perpetual seeking without ever providing true satisfaction.
Because there's no end to it.
Think about traditional media. You read a novel, you watch a film, you do a jigsaw puzzle. They all have inherent physical boundaries.
The final page or rolling credits.
And those boundaries act as a completion cue for the nervous system. A definitive signal sent to the brain saying the activity is over, the goal is met.
And then you can relax.
The dopamine system downregulates, and your mind naturally disengages. But the infinite scroll deliberately denies your nervous system this completion cue.
Because there is literally no bottom to the page.
Never. The architecture prevents the brain from registering that the task is done. So you are trapped in an open loop. The brain reads it as almost satisfied, so you never encounter a psychological stopping point.
You know, here is where it gets really interesting to me. I am thinking about physical hobbies that use this exact same variable reward system, like collecting blind box toys or trading cards. The psychological engine is identical. You buy a sealed foil pack, you have no idea what is inside, and the uncertainty triggers that massive anticipation spike.
You are searching for novelty.
Right. You are hoping to pull that rare holographic card. But there is a massive difference between the physical world and the digital world, and that difference is friction.
Explain what you mean by friction.
Well, with physical objects, the environment pushes back against your compulsion. There are boundaries. First, there's the financial cost. You literally run out of money to buy cards.
Right.
Then there is the physical limit of the collection itself. Eventually, you have all the toys, the set is done.
The completion cue. Right.
And there's the boundary of time and space. You have to drive to a store or wait 3 days for shipping. Every single one of those moments of friction serves as a soft stopping boundary for your nervous system.
It breaks the hypnotic loop.
It breaks the loop. But the digital scroll entirely removes all of this friction. It is frictionless, instantaneous, and infinite.
And worse than that, unlike a static box of trading cards, the digital algorithm is alive.
Yes.
It adapts in real time. Every single swipe, every micro hesitation is tracked to figure out exactly what kind of psychological bait keeps you on the hook.
It maps out your vulnerability.
It learns your fears, your specific brand of outrage, your boredom, and customizes the reward schedule entirely to you. And this removal of friction isn't an accident.
No, it's totally deliberate.
In the tech industry, these specific interface choices are actually called dark patterns.
Dark patterns. That sounds so ominous.
Let's look at the mechanics. We mentioned the pull to refresh. That is a literal digital translation of the slot machine lever.
They could just have it load automatically, couldn't they?
They could make it seamless, but they force you to make a physical downward pulling motion to create that engineered pause the spinning wheel.
Artificially recreating the suspense in the casino reel.
Yes, and then consider the universal use of red notification badges.
Oh, the little red dots. I hate them. Yeah.
Because in the natural world, throughout our evolutionary history, the color red is a primary visual signal for biological relevance.
Like blood or danger.
Blood, danger, ripe fruit, venomous insects. It bypasses conscious thought and speaks directly to your brain's ancient threat detection systems.
So by making the dots red.
They co-opt that primitive circuitry. A red dot demands immediate attention. It generates persistent, low-grade anxiety until you click it. When you layer these dark patterns, the slot machine lever, the evolutionary panic button, the infinite scroll, the conscious, rational mind is entirely outmatched.
Which brings us to the physical manifestation of this trap, because this is what always confused me about Elias sitting in the dark at 3 a.m.
What's that?
If his dopamine system is firing, if he is engaged in this highly engineered seeking behavior, why does he look so miserable? His body wasn't vibrating with excitement. His eyes were watering, he was paralyzed, and he felt the heavy silence pressing against him. That does not sound like a nervous system experiencing a reward.
No, it doesn't.
It sounds like a nervous system undergoing a total shutdown.
That is a very astute way to describe it, and clinically, you are highly accurate. The state you are describing, that familiar zoning out feeling, is frequently misinterpreted.
People think they're relaxing.
They think, I'm just winding down. But physiologically, what is happening is the exact opposite of rest. The nervous system is being overwhelmed by a rapid, chaotic influx of disparate emotional stimuli. You mentioned it earlier, grief from a war zone, comedy from a skateboard, a funeral, pasta.
All in 30 seconds.
The human brain did not evolve to process whiplash emotional shifts at that velocity. So, to manage the overstimulation, the nervous system enters a protective state. Clinically, this is known as a dorsal vagal drift.
A dorsal vagal drift.
Yeah.
Break down what that actually means for the physical body.
So the vagus nerve is a major component of your parasympathetic nervous system. It runs from your brainstem down through your chest and abdomen.
Okay.
It controls unconscious body functions like digestion and heart rate. According to polyvagal theory, when the dorsal branch of this nerve is activated by inescapable stress or massive overstimulation, it initiates a primitive survival response.
Which is shut down.
Think of an animal playing dead when it can't escape a predator. The body immobilizes, breathing becomes incredibly shallow, heart rate lowers.
Wow.
Peripheral awareness, your sense of the room around you, narrows dramatically. It is essentially a subthreshold version of dissociation.
So you feel checked out, not because your mind is resting, but because your nervous system is literally pulling the plug.
Exactly. It disconnects from reality to avoid processing the chaotic emotional load from the screen.
So the motivation completely inverts over time. It starts as reward-seeking Elias wants that dopamine hit. But as hours pass, it transitions into emotional buffering. People stop scrolling for entertainment, and they start scrolling specifically to create distance from their own inner world.
That shift is profound. The phone transforms from an entertainment device into a shield.
A shield against overstimulation or loneliness or just decision fatigue.
The dopamine system still fires enough to keep you swiping, but the underlying utility has shifted entirely to sedation.
It's a glowing barrier.
And your nervous system learns very quickly that this frictionless action provides temporary protection from internal discomfort.
I really want to explore the aftermath of this. Because if this dorsal vagal state is a biological shutdown, why does it leave you feeling so absolutely terrible afterward?
The emotional hangover.
Anyone who has lost 2 hours to the scroll knows it. There is this heavy, restless discomfort and a thick mental fog when you finally put the phone down.
It's awful.
To me, it feels like putting a piece of black tape over the check engine light on your car's dashboard.
Technology.
Because you might not see the warning light shining in your face anymore, so you feel this temporary superficial relief. You think, great, I don't have to deal with that. But the problem beneath the hood hasn't been fixed. The engine is still actively burning out, the oil pressure is dropping, and the tape isn't repairing anything. And that delay just ensures the breakdown is going to be so much more catastrophic later.
That analogy perfectly captures the mechanism of delayed emotional processing. The dorsal vagal drift provides distance the tape over the light, but it does not resolve the emotion.
It just suspends it.
In a state of unacknowledged physical tension. While you are locked in that scrolling session, your body is immobilized, but it is not relaxed.
Because true rest requires safety.
Exactly. True biological rest requires the nervous system to feel safe enough to actually process and release tension. Doom scrolling forces you into a paradox.
Because you are vigilant and immobilized at the same time.
Highly vigilant to the rapid digital shifts while physically frozen. So when the scroll finally ends, usually just due to physical exhaustion or a dead battery, all those suppressed emotional states return immediately.
The loneliness and anxiety haven't gone anywhere.
And now they're exacerbated by the physiological depletion caused by spending hours in a dorsal vagal state. Your brain mistook the cold distance of dissociation for the warm relief of actual rest.
And what's terrifying is that this device's hold on us doesn't end when we finally escape the scroll and turn the screen black. The exhaustion follows us.
It bleeds into everything else.
I want to transition from active scrolling to what happens when we try to do deep, focused work in the real world. Let me introduce you to Sarah.
Hey, tell me about Sarah.
Sarah is an architect. She is staring at a blinking cursor on a blank white canvas on her monitor. She has been assigned the cornerstone rendering for her firm's biggest Chicago pitch. It's this massive, complex structure.
High stakes.
Now, 10 years ago, Sarah would have drowned herself in the draft. She'd enter a pure flow state, surface 5 hours later with a masterpiece. But today is different. The Slack notifications sound that cheerful, synthetic little knock brush noise. It shatters her focus like a thrown rock against a glass window.
Oh, I can hear that sound in my head right now.
We all can. It's just Dave from marketing asking a trivial question. Then an Outlook email pings. Then a calendar reminder pops up.
Constant interruption.
Her attention span, which used to be this deep, calm river of thought, is now a fractured, shallow puddle. She tries to focus, draws a single line, deletes it, then almost instinctively her hand reaches for her phone to check a feed she doesn't even care about.
The phantom limb.
It's an itch she can't scratch but can't ignore. She looks around her modern open-plan office. It's a sea of slumped shoulders, bathed in the glow of multiple monitors.
Everyone is communicating, but no one is creating.
She closes her eyes, trying to summon that quiet sanctuary of deep thought. But all she hears is the deafening static of 1,000 unread messages. She realizes she is a master builder who has been reduced to a nervous switchboard operator.
It's the defining tragedy of the modern knowledge worker. It beautifully illustrates the ambient cost of constant connectivity.
Because the drain doesn't stop when the phone is locked.
And this brings us to a landmark piece of research that completely reframed how we understand distraction. It was a study conducted by Assistant Professor Adrian Ward and his colleagues at the McCombs School of Business at UT Austin.
This study is wild.
They set out to measure the precise impact of a smartphone's mere physical proximity on a person's cognitive capacity, even when the device is completely silent and not in use.
And the methodology was so rigorous. They didn't just ask people, hey, do you feel distracted?
No, they measured the literal computing power of the brain.
They recruited nearly 800 smartphone users.
A huge sample. And they required them to complete a series of complex computer-based tests designed to strictly measure available cognitive capacity.
Which is basically the brain's bandwidth, right?
Working memory and fluid intelligence. The tests, like the automated operations span task, require a person to solve math equations while simultaneously memorizing a sequence of random letters. It demands absolute, undivided focus. And the central variable was the physical placement of the participants' phones during the tests.
So before it began, they were randomly assigned to 3 conditions. Condition 1, they place their phones face down on the desk right in front of them. Condition 2, they put the phone out of sight, either in their pocket or in a personal bag.
And condition 3.
Their phones were completely removed from the environment and placed in another room entirely. And it's crucial to note, in all 3 conditions, the phones were strictly on silent. No vibrations, no pings, no visual notifications.
The results of this were stark. and frankly, deeply concerning for anyone trying to do deep work. It revealed that participants whose phones were in another room significantly outperformed those whose phones were on the desk.
Oh.
Furthermore, the ones with phones in another room also outperformed those who kept their phones concealed in a pocket or bag.
Wait, even if it was hidden in a pocket, it still drained them.
The researchers found a clear linear trend. As the smartphone became more physically noticeable or accessible, available cognitive capacity measurably decreased.
Terrifying.
And here is the most critical element. This impairment occurred even though the participants genuinely felt they were giving their absolute, undivided attention to the tests.
So they weren't consciously thinking about their phones at all.
If you asked them, they would say they were totally focused.
Which introduces this terrifying concept of brain drain. Even if the phone is off, even if it is face down, its mere presence acts as a vacuum on your cognitive resources.
Ward termed it the mere presence effect.
Because part of your brain is actively expending metabolic energy just to not pick up the phone. It is inhibiting a deeply ingrained motor response.
The conscious mind is focused on the math problem, but the subconscious is running a background program continuously managing the inhibition of the habit.
Just constantly fighting the urge.
And this continuous low-level cognitive load depletes the overall pool of working memory available for complex thought.
They also looked at smartphone dependence in that study, didn't they?
They did. In a secondary experiment, they found that individuals who felt the strongest psychological reliance on their phones suffered the most severe cognitive impairment when the device was present.
But if it was in another room?
The performance gap between highly dependent and less dependent users vanished entirely. Removing the object removed the cognitive burden of resisting it.
You know, hearing you lay out the mechanics of that, it makes me think of trying to solve a complex math equation while someone is standing 2 inches away from you, constantly whispering your name over and over again.
That sounds like torture.
You might not turn around to look at them.
Yeah.
You might forcefully direct your eyes at the paper and genuinely try your hardest to focus on the numbers. But the sheer act of ignoring that voice, the effort required to fight the primal human instinct to respond when your name is called, requires an immense expenditure of mental energy. By the time you reach the end of the equation, your cognitive fuel is entirely depleted, not by the math, but by the sheer effort of ignoring the distraction. The smartphone is that whispering voice,
Calling out to your nervous system constantly.
even when the screen is black.
Yeah.
But this raises a fundamental question.
Okay, what is it?
If the phone drains our cognitive capacity so severely,
Yeah.
if it reduces Sarah to a fractured switchboard operator, and if it leaves Elias in an exhausted shutdown, why is the psychological pull so insurmountable?
Why do we endure the brain drain?
Why don't we just easily put the phones in another room?
Well, the answer lies in how these platforms have successfully hijacked the most fundamental biological imperative of the human species, the absolute necessity of social connection and validation for survival.
This is where we cross from distraction into existential territory. We are looking at the gamification of human acceptance. The architecture isn't just delivering random novelty like a slot machine. It is delivering quantified metrics of our social worth.
Likes, comments, shares, view counts.
They aren't just abstract data points. They are tangible, numeric feedback loops of social acceptance, and delivered on that exact same variable ratio schedule.
To understand the terrifying power of this, we must look at the neurobiology of social validation. Researchers like neuroscientist Mauricio Delgado have demonstrated that social media metrics activate ancient evolutionary pathways in the brain.
What happens in the brain when we get a like?
When participants in brain imaging studies view their own photographs receiving likes, there is a distinct activation in a region called the nucleus accumbens.
The nucleus accumbens.
It is a critical hub in the brain's reward circuitry. It is the exact same neurological center that processes the immense pleasure associated with monetary gains, consuming high-calorie foods when starving, and addictive substances.
The brain processes a like on a photo with the same biological urgency as finding food.
And from an evolutionary perspective, this makes perfect sense.
Because we lived in tribes.
For hundreds of thousands of years, human survival relied entirely on remaining in the good graces of the tribe. A human being alone in the wilderness is a dead human being.
We don't have claws or fur.
Right, we lack the physical attributes to survive without cooperative defense. Therefore, exclusion from the group literally meant death.
So the brain evolved to process social approval as life and death.
By quantifying this approval, turning it into a number you can track and dispensing it unpredictably, platforms bypass our higher reasoning and create an addiction to the validation itself.
And this quantified environment completely distorts how individuals interact with their own lives. Well, if your worth is constantly being measured and displayed publicly, it forces a shift in your behavior. You begin to optimize for those algorithms.
Performative authenticity.
I read about that in the research, and it honestly threw me. How does chasing a dopamine hit turn into changing your personality?
It happens so gradually.
People begin to carefully curate their experiences, their opinions, even their darkest emotional struggles, packaging them into formats that will yield the highest numerical return.
They optimize their grief for likes.
It's tragic. The individual begins to live entirely inside the imagination of the audience. They were no longer just experiencing a vacation. They are calculating how it will be perceived digitally.
Their internal worth is measured against curated realities.
It creates this profound alienation from their actual unperformed self.
This alienation is especially concerning when we analyze younger demographics, like Generation Z and Generation Alpha.
Because they grew up in this.
Their entire developmental arc occurred within quantified digital spaces. To understand the impact, we have to look at how humans historically learned to manage emotional distress.
Okay.
Historically, the human nervous system achieved safety and grounding through physical co-regulation.
Oh, regulation, meaning needing another physical person to calm down.
When an infant or even an adult experiences distress, their autonomic nervous system naturally seeks proximity to another human being.
Right, a hug or just someone sitting with them.
The physical presence of a calm individual is biologically communicative. Their tone of voice, their micro-expressions, the steady rhythm of their breathing, these physical cues biologically signal safety to the distressed nervous system.
It allows their heart rate to slow down.
Physical co-regulation is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity for healthy emotional development.
But now, digital co-regulation has largely replaced this. For younger generations, the earliest calming signals they received didn't always come from the steady breathing of a parent. They came from the glowing screen of a tablet being handed to them.
So when they feel distress today,
Their body remembers what historically provided immediate regulation, and it instinctively turns back to the device.
and this creates a deeply complex dynamic that researchers call parasocial proximity.
Parasocial proximity. I've heard of parasocial relationships, but what is proximity?
Through the infinite scroll, users are granted the illusion of witnessing the intimate inner worlds of hundreds of other people,
Right, you see morning routines, breakdowns, confessions.
all from a completely safe, unbridgeable distance. The nervous system registers this influx of faces and voices as being near people, but not with people.
Wow.
It provides the sensation of social connection without demanding any of the vulnerability or energetic cost required by actual human interaction.
Which points out the tragic irony of modern communication. Interacting with a close friend in real life, or even on a phone call, can often feel totally exhausting.
Because it requires actual participation.
It demands that you actively listen, process their emotions, and offer your own vulnerability. It requires your nervous system to fully engage.
It costs energy.
Whereas scrolling past hundreds of strangers' lives on a feed for 3 hours feels easy because it requires absolutely nothing of you.
You are just a passive observer behind glass.
It is the perfect illusion of a crowded, buzzing room, but it leaves you entirely alone. You are starving for actual human co-regulation while you gorge yourself on these empty digital calories.
This brings us to a crucial breaking point. What happens when a nervous system that has been conditioned for years by variable rewards, dark patterns, and digital co-regulation is suddenly forcefully cut off from the network?
But withdrawal.
If the phone is both the drain and the buffer, disconnecting isn't just a matter of turning it off and feeling instantly better. It involves a profound physical withdrawal.
Let's look at what that withdrawal actually feels like. I want to tell you about Leo.
Okay, at the scene.
Leo is 22 years old. And right now, the silence on the edge of the woods where he is standing is completely overwhelming to him. No phantom vibrations in his pocket, no metrics to tell him who he's supposed to be today. Leo had locked his smartphone in the glove compartment of his car 3 days ago for a digital detox.
How are the first couple of days?
The first 48 hours were a visceral withdrawal. He described having a literal physical ache in his right hand where the phone normally sat.
The physical habit runs that deep.
And he experienced a suffocating, rising panic that he was rapidly vanishing from the earth.
because he couldn't see his digital footprint.
He felt entirely invisible. But then, on the third morning, a subtle shift occurred. He was sitting on the wooden porch of the cabin, holding a chipped mug of cheap, bitter coffee.
It's just being present.
And he found himself watching a spider painstakingly weave a web between two of the porch rails. He watched it for an entire hour. And the revelation wasn't the spider. The revelation was that there was no urge to photograph it. There was no impulse to draft a clever caption about nature to post online. For the first time since childhood, he wasn't consuming content, and he wasn't performing his reality for an audience.
He was simply existing.
He described this strange, unfamiliar warmth blossoming in his chest, a raw, uncurated clarity. The anxiety hadn't completely disappeared, but the crushing weight of infinite comparison had momentarily lifted, leaving behind this quiet, fragile joy.
Leo's narrative is so powerful, but it's not just poetry. It actually provides a vital anecdotal window into a highly documented clinical process.
The withdrawal is measurable, isn't it?
The physical ache, the panic of invisibility that is a neurological response to the abrupt cessation of dopamine spikes and the removal of the primary coping mechanism for anxiety.
Let's look at the clinical data on that.
A comprehensive study on digital detox was conducted by Dr. Mewish Mursaleen and colleagues. They wanted to quantify the actual impact of intentional disconnection on psychological resilience.
And the parameters were incredibly robust. They didn't just ask people to put their phones down for an afternoon.
No, they selected 200 participants, all between 18 and 35.
The prime demographic.
And these individuals were instructed to undergo a total digital detox, a complete disengagement from platforms for a full period of 2 weeks. Their states were then meticulously measured against a control group of 100 participants who maintained their regular digital habits.
And the metrics they used were critical to the validity, right?
So, they utilized the Warwick-Edinburgh Mental Well-Being Scale.
Which isn't just a basic quiz.
No, it is a widely respected, validated tool in clinical psychology. It measures a broad spectrum of mental health indicators, emotional stability, stress levels, overall functioning.
They administered it before and after the detox.
And the quantitative results were massive. Prior to the intervention, both groups had comparable baseline scores. They were in the same boat.
But
the data diverged sharply. The group that completed the 2-week detox demonstrated a massive 21.5% jump in their well-being scores.
21.5%. That is a huge leap.
It is statistically immense. In stark contrast, the control group scores remained entirely stagnant. Qualitative interviews revealed they continue to feel paralyzed by what researchers termed digital fatigue.
So the resilience gained by the detox group was profound.
Completely. Removing the constant cognitive drain and endless social comparison allowed their baseline psychological resilience to naturally recover.
And the qualitative themes from those interviews mirror Leo's experience perfectly.
Oh, exactly the same trajectory.
It began with those brutal initial withdrawal symptoms, the restlessness, phantom urges, intense anxiety. But once they passed that threshold,
they reported profound emotional clarity.
Because they finally had the mental space to process their own feelings, like Leo with the spider.
And it impacted their real lives. The study documented a doubling of focus and productivity among detox participants.
Released from the brain drain.
Their cognitive capacity was restored. They could do deep work without the fracturing of attention that Sarah the architect experienced.
But I think the most vital finding was the impact on relationships.
The strengthening of face-to-face interaction.
Right. Because they were denied the frictionless path of parasocial digital proximity, they were forced to seek out genuine human interaction.
To meet their biological need for connection.
They had real conversations, which required vulnerability and physical presence, providing the authentic co-regulation their nervous systems had been starving for.
When you synthesize all of this, the UT Austin data, Dr. Mursaleen's clinical outcomes, Sinner's behavioral frameworks, the dopamine system, it points to an undeniable conclusion about what a digital detox actually achieves.
It's not just willpower.
It is not about white-knuckling your way through arbitrarily imposed screen time limits just to prove you can. It is about actively rebuilding the human capacity to tolerate one's own baseline existence. It is about retraining the nervous system to be able to sit in a quiet room, to experience boredom, sadness, or joy without immediately reaching for a frictionless digital anesthetic.
Because the ultimate issue we are facing is not the technology itself, is it?
No, the technology, the fiber optics, the algorithms, they're just highly efficient tools.
The deeper crisis lies in what the technology is being used to mask. Historically, tools are meant to extend human capability, not replace human presence. Through variable ratio reinforcement and performative authenticity, the human brain has been heavily rewarded. The dopamine pathways are completely saturated. But the human soul, the capacity for deep connection and quiet contemplation, has been deeply starved by an endless diet of empty input.
The glowing screen provides the illusion of connection while fostering unprecedented isolation.
Which brings us to the final truth of all of this. The true modern disease is not the act of scrolling itself. It is the profound unwillingness to be alone with who we are becoming. The quietness of the mind has slowly mutated from a sanctuary into a threat. And the urgent twitching reflex to swipe, to refresh, to escape into the blue glow of the screen is ultimately just a symptom of a much deeper, much quieter human flight from reality.